Welcome in or welcome back, my fellow Earth Angels. If this is your first time here, my name is Taylor and I make videos on practical faith, practicing self-love, and preserving your temple. If that sounds like something that's up your alley, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to let me know. You can also leave your thoughts below. Now, let me tell you what we're getting into in this video. We are about to discuss why Christ knows better than you and I. All right, and let me give you a brief little overview of what you can expect from this video. We are going to, we're gonna give the context before we give the scripture. Then we're gonna go over the scripture, and then we're gonna break it down a little bit. I'll bring in some insights from my own personal life to help paint the picture of what the scripture really means. We'll go over lessons, and then I'll leave you with some questions to think about when you leave the video. Before we jump in, a word from our sponsor. Who's our sponsor? Me! I have a calendar that is available for purchase if you're interested. This is a 2026 calendar. It's more for faith-based personal growth. There's nature pictures for every month. There's a Proverbs verse at the top, related affirmations in the middle, and a reflection question to guide your month. This is for people who want to grow their walk with the Lord, or just get closer to themselves, or do a bit of both. It's really for personal development, inner growth, all of that stuff. Yep, that's available. Link is in the description. Also, you'll see me drinking throughout the video if I get a little parched from my Drink the Living water cup. If you're interested in this, you can also find it on my Etsy shop. It says Drink the Living Water, and there's biblical references to different scriptures along the side of it. Like I have Ecclesiastes 12:13, Isaiah 43:21, Revelation 4:11, and it just goes around. If you're interested in this cup, it comes in 5 colors. I have purple, blue, pink, yellow, and green. So again, this is available on my Etsy shop for purchase. If you're interested the link will be in the description below. Now that we're done with that, let's jump right in. So starting with the context. First of all, we're going to be reading Matthew chapter 11, verse 1 through 6. In the context, let me read it for you. So in Matthew 11, John the Baptist is in prison held by King Herod, who had unlawfully married his brother's wife. Scandalous. According to Jewish law, this marriage was considered adultery and illegal, which is why John boldly spoke out against it, standing on business. From prison, John began to wonder if Jesus is truly the Messiah he had been preparing the way for. Because he's like, why are you out there granting miracles and I'm still in this prison? Hello? Despite having baptized Jesus and witnessed the Spirit descend on him, John is facing doubt, likely due to the harsh reality of his imprisonment and his expectations of a political and conquering Messiah. Jesus responds by showing that his ministry matches what the scriptures predicted in the book of Isaiah, affirming his identity through action rather than words. All right, that was a mouthful, but I think it's important to provide context before we dive into the scripture. That's not something I've always done, but definitely something I plan to do going forward with my videos. So now that we have the context, let's read the scripture and then we'll break it down a bit more. All right, join me, friends, in Matthew 11. When Jesus had finished giving instructions to his 12 disciples, he moved on from there to teach and preach in their towns. Now, when John heard in prison what the Christ was doing, he sent a message through his disciples and asked him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied to them, "Go and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor are told the good news. And blessed is the one who isn't offended by me." That's a clean read from Jesus. Just a quick little overview of what we just read. Essentially, like we gave the context, John the Baptist is in prison because he boldly spoke out against King Herod for his adulterous ways. Like, he took his brother's wife for his own. Like, how scandalous can you be? And because he had the nerve to call him out and call a spade, King Herod threw him in prison. John the Baptist is sitting in prison. At the beginning, he was probably like, all right, my cousin Jesus is going to come get me. He on the way. And after some time, John is sitting in prison like, why am I still in this prison cell? I expected to be released as soon as Jesus got wind. My cousin Jesus got wind that I am sitting in this box. So John sends a messenger to Jesus to be like, hello, are you actually the Messiah, or should I expect someone else? And in him saying that, he's like, you can't be the God I've been expecting, because you would have saved me from this prison that I'm experiencing. Surely you would have released me had you been the real Messiah. Like, should I be expecting someone else? Are you not who I thought you were? Despite the fact that John baptized Jesus, he watched the dove come down and descend on him. But what we see here is because of the imprisonment John is experiencing, and he can't see no way out, he's experiencing doubt. And so many of us can relate to that. Like, how many of us see other people getting blessings, and we've been praying for something, we've been hoping for something, we've been believing for something, and we look around and see all these people who, whether it's our business or not, to think that they deserve the blessing or not, we looking at them getting their blessing, we're like, hello, Jesus, hello, God, why are you blessing all these people and I'm still stuck in my prison? Why are you delivering all these people and yet you have not saved me from my problems? So what we're seeing is that John is experiencing doubt, like, man, you must not be the God I've been waiting for, because surely the God that I'm waiting for would have saved me from my personal hell. Surely, surely, surely. Jesus gets this message and Jesus is like, hello? Jesus did not address his concerns outright. Jesus said, I'm not even responding to that foolish question. Instead, let me tell you what actions I have performed. Jesus runs down the list of things only the great Messiah could do. So instead of arguing his point, Jesus is just like, and I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Come to your own conclusion about who I am based on what I've done. And then Jesus is like, blessed is the one who's not offended by me. We'll break that down a little later. I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but that's just the context. I just broke it down for you real quick. What is happening here? So we're seeing a very real and human emotion from John. He is experiencing doubt because his eyes, what he's seeing, it's not matching what he believed would happen. And how many of us can relate to that? Shoot, I'm going through it right now. At the time I am making this video, when I first launched my Etsy shop, my YouTube channel, my Substack, I thought surely I'm gonna blow up overnight. Surely this good content is gonna reach the masses and I'm gonna see it doing numbers quickly. Man, oh man, have I been humbled, because it is definitely a slow burn and I have to keep showing up. I have to keep believing this thing, even though it is not happening in the timeline I would have expected it to happen. And I know I'm not alone. I want you to think about what you've been believing God for that's made you feel doubtful. Like, is God even listening to me? Because I've been praying for the same thing for years. I've been praying for the same thing, asking for the same thing for a bit too long. You almost feel like, Lord, I'm tired of repeating myself. Surely if you were listening, you would have done what I've asked. And that is what is so important about this scripture. Jesus knows more than us. Jesus has better insight than us. And we can have more faith in Jesus's timeline than our own timeline, because we don't even know what we're asking for real. So despite the fact that John isn't seeing the results he expected to see, Jesus is still Jesus. Don't go questioning if God is who he is just because he's not doing what you want him to do on the timeline you want him to do it. You have to think about it. If you think you could do a better job of being God than God, think about the fact that you struggle to wake up with your alarm. How would you get the sun up every day? Like, come on, let's humble ourselves. You have a hard time waking up on your own. You think you're going to be able to get the birds up in the sky. You're going to get them singing first thing in the morning. Come on. Humble ourselves. So that's what Jesus's response to John was, essentially. Like, I am who I said I am. You know I am who I said I am. And what proves this, we're not going to dive into the book of Isaiah, but the book of Isaiah happened about 730 to 770 years before the book of Matthew. So the predictions, the prophecies that were made in the book of Isaiah, they are coming true in the book of Matthew. So Jesus is saying what they prophesied about 700 plus years ago, I'm doing the things. I am who everyone has been waiting for. I'm who they've been waiting to show up to the party. Jesus is like, don't play with me. Don't play with me. And when he says, blessed is the one who isn't offended by me, he's saying the person who doesn't stumble just because they're not seeing the results they expected to see will be blessed. If you have in your mind, oh, this is going to happen by this timeline, I believe God because I know he's going to get this thing done on this day, by this time, at this moment, right? And then it doesn't happen the way you expected it to happen. And you start cursing God and you start not believing and you start diminishing in your faith. That's not good for you, because he's saying the opposite reaction is what would call you to be blessed. The person who keeps believing, the person who has faith in God's all power, God's all knowing that, okay, it didn't happen when I wanted it to happen, but I have faith that God's going to let it happen at the perfect time for me. God knows more than I know. God knows when this thing needs to be set in motion, or if I don't need it at all. I'm trusting that God knows better than I do. Even though I want it, there must be a reason that I don't have it yet, you know? So Christ is still Christ, even when he doesn't give us what we asked for. And blessed is the person who doesn't stumble just because we didn't get what we wanted. You have to have more faith that God knows what he's doing than you looking at the fact that your situation hasn't changed or you haven't got what you've been praying for, because you don't know why God hasn't given it to you yet. Or maybe you haven't done your part in the story to get what you're asking for yet. It's almost like praying for a new car, or a new house, a new home or something, but you ain't putting no work in to get it. It's like, why would you just get that out of nowhere? It's not time for you to get that yet. You haven't put no work in. That was just a quick little example. All right, let's get into some lessons. All right, what do we learn from this story? That even the strongest faith can have moments of doubt, and faith can coexist with doubt. Why do we know that from this story? Because if you know anything about John the Baptist, John the Baptist was a man of great faith. He literally paved the way for Jesus to come. He was telling people about this great Messiah before he even arrived. So his faith was so great, and we're seeing that even he stumbled because he wasn't seeing the results that he expected to see. Because we have this idea in our head of what God should do. God should grant all of our wishes, all of our desires. God should give us everything we want. But you know, I heard Pastor Philip Anthony, I think that's his middle name, Mitchell, he said the worst thing you could do for a child is give them everything they want. Or something like that. So we're seeing that even a man of great faith still experienced doubt. And it's not to take away from John, but it's to just kind of reveal that he's still a human. Doubt is a very human emotion, but we can't dwell on that. Let me take another sip. Etsy. All right, let's move on to the next lesson. Jesus does not have to explain himself to you or prove anything to you, but God will confirm who he is through his actions, okay? Like, when you think about our mighty God, he is busy running the entire world, And you know what is most impressive about God running the entire world? He can be everywhere at once. He is doing it all at the same time. As much as he's moving in your life, he's moving in my life at the same time, and he does everything in his perfect timing. So even though, for example, I want to see my YouTube page do big numbers, I want to see it done quickly. God knows better than me. God knows that I don't need that to happen overnight because I couldn't handle it overnight. It needs to be a slow burn for sure. And we just have to trust that God knows better than us. I think the best way to explain it, there's another verse that talks about it that I do not remember right now, but essentially the verse talks about how his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And the best way to picture that, I heard Myron Golden talk about this in a video, and he painted such a vivid picture of, think about when you're on a plane and you go up in the plane and you look down and everything looks so small. You're just like, wow, everyone looks like ants down there. As high as we get in those planes, we're still not as high as God is. So when God looks down on us, our problems are but this small. He has a bigger perspective to consider, something that we can't see, because you know, the further away something gets, you can't see the details. Like, think of this cup. When it's back here, you can't see the full picture, right? As I bring it closer, you can make out some words. Oh, what does that say? Drink the living water. You're so close to it. Now you can see it, right? For God, he sees a much bigger picture. Like, this isn't the only thing on his mind, right? He's looking at all of these things. He's looking at all of this at once. Whereas for you, you're so close to it, you can only see this. You don't even know there's more stuff going on, right? Let's take some appreciation for God's view, God's perspective. That's why his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts, because he can see it all. He's seeing the much bigger picture. And not to kind of ruin the story if you don't know, but John did die in that prison. John absolutely died in that prison. And it might seem harsh, like, why did this man of great faith die, especially the way he died? I won't ruin that for you if you want to go figure out how he died. But I think that's very important to note in this video, that sometimes we're not going to get what we want, but we have to understand that God has a much bigger perspective, a much bigger plan in play. And for example, in this scenario, John had to die. John paved the way for Jesus. John was a superstar in his own right because he was preaching that gospel, right? But the bigger picture was Jesus. Jesus is the reason we all have access to salvation. Jesus was the bigger star, and Jesus and John, they couldn't both coexist. They couldn't both go on. Someone had to go. John's work was done. He walked so Jesus could run, essentially, in that context. So we have to understand that God knows what's best for us. And if he's not giving us something, or he delays us receiving that thing, there is a reason for it. And you have to trust that, have faith in that. Christ knows better than you. Christ knows better than me. I think what we can also take from Jesus's response is he didn't use his words to argue his point of why he did what and why he didn't do what. Jesus just said, I did this, I did that. He didn't even say I. He said, look at what you see. Let me read it exactly. He said, the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor are told the good news. He's just listing out actions that have been accomplished. He's like, I don't need to tell you who I am. Let me tell you what has been accomplished. And if you think back to Isaiah, you're like, oh, they prophesied that when the Messiah comes, these things will happen. So he's like, I don't even need to tell you who I am. I just need to tell you what's going on. Actions. And I think that's a good example for us to live by. Less words, more action. Stop telling people what you're gonna do. Stop telling people what you've done. Let the fruits of your work be on display. Let people see your fruit, let people see your actions, and let them draw their own conclusions about who you are and what you've done. You don't need to, when your actions are louder than your words, you're in a good place. Or maybe not so good. Think about like a bad relationship. I've been here, so I can use this example. When that man's just, he's giving you lip service, telling you all the things he's gonna do for you, he can do for you, but yet his actions aren't lining up with the things he's saying. You're gonna believe his actions over his words. It's like, you keep talking about you're gonna take me on a date. Why have we been talking for 5 months and I haven't been on no date? You keep talking about you're gonna pay that bill, you're gonna buy me this thing, you're gonna clean that thing, but yet I'm looking at it and it hasn't been done. The actions always speak louder than words. You don't need to use too many words. Ooh, that one went deep. Let's move on to the next lesson. All right, God always keeps his word. Jesus confirmed the prophecies he fulfilled that were prophesied. God moves in his own divine timing, not our expected schedule. There was about 730 to 770 years between Isaiah's spoken prophecy and Jesus fulfilling that prophecy. I did already talk a bit about that, but just to sum it up again, just to put it in your face again. Let's move on to the final lesson that I'm going to go over for today. Have encouragement that God is who he says he is, and he knows better than you. When you're enduring hardship or you're waiting on your blessing, you have to surrender your expectations to God's plan, trusting his timing and methods are perfect because God sees the much bigger picture, okay? Remember when, I went down a whole tangent talking about that, so we won't revisit it, but just to wrap it up. So that is it for the lessons I have. Let me leave you with a few questions to think about. Where am I struggling to submit to God's will over my own? Am I being honest with God about my doubts? Remember, God knows what's in your head and what's in your heart. So you might as well be honest because he already knows. And the last question, have I ever thought I knew better than God? When you think of all that God manages, do you really think you could handle such heavy responsibilities? So every time you start questioning why God hasn't moved a certain thing in your life, you have to think, do I know better than God? Because surely there's a reason God hasn't given me what I've asked for. Surely there's a reason God did something that I wasn't expecting. Surely God has reasons that are above my understanding and I just need to submit to it. Father-child relationship. We don't need to be questioning our father. You can. He invites questions. He encourages questions. But don't do it disrespectfully, okay? Do it. Let those questions come from a pure place. And if he's willing, he'll answer. He'll give you guidance. He'll give you perspective. All right. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I hope it was clear for you. Feel free to answer any of those questions in the comment below. I would really like to know. Don't forget to check out my Etsy shop. Get your calendar or your Drink the Living water cup. And I'll see you for our lesson tomorrow. Bye.